Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game Mess Mornings with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from GiantBomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a forgotten Switch game reemerging on the Switch 2, and how is anyone still buying a PS5 after its price increase? It's going to be a good one because we have Matthew Finneman on the show. Finn, how are you doing?
You know what? I'm doing wonderfully because I'm here with the great Jeff Grubb, talking about random stuff in video games. So, what better way to start a Friday?
Yeah, it's definitely like a random Dregs Day Friday here. A lot of stories. Like yesterday, we were kind of jam-packed on this show, and you could tell everyone's like, all right, we're taking the rest of the week off. So we got a few stories here or there, stuff worth talking about for sure. I'm glad you're here, though, Finn. We
You know
always
what?
run into each other at like shows, PAX usually, and it's like, oh, hell yeah, Finn. And then I don't see you to the next PAX. We finally fixed
Correct.
that. Here
You
you
know
are.
what? It was meant to be finally. It was put in motion long ago. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, yes. So, usually you travel up to PAX. That is where I see you. Do you like when you go to those shows? I know you like cover them for like your personal YouTube channel. You still get
Yeah.
the same amount of joy out of going to PAX. I certainly have been.
You know what? Yes. It still remains such a fun time for me. And part of it is because, like you mentioned, it is the only time I get to see so many of my friends
Yeah,
in this sphere, right? So whether it's PAX West or PAX East, each one has its own like group of people that tend to go to it. So I treat them 50% trying out fun games and talking with devs and 50% reunions with
yeah,
lovely people.
absolutely. And when you do talk to devs and you create your stuff, like where can people find your stuff?
Oh yeah.
How do you do your coverage? Tell everyone.
So I'm at NOLA Nerdcast because I'm originally from New Orleans. So I mean, whether it's YouTube or just starting back up on Twitch, I've revived the whole thing. I used to be part of another group, and now I'm rolling solo and bringing back my original content channel, basically. And I do interviews. You know, this is going to shock you, Jeff, but I'm a white guy with a podcast. It's
What?
about game. I know. Don't call me a unicorn. Don't call me an innovator.
It's
But
magic.
yeah, I mean, it's just fun. I love talking to devs and people in the industry, and whether it's comics or games or anything, and feeling their passion and just talking to them and just try. I try not to be too professional or serious. I try and keep it lively. I feel like you can relate to that, but it's just seeing people talk about what they love and what they're working on just kind of fuels my joy of what I do,
Yeah,
and it's fun.
yeah, fantastic stuff. I have a couple of questions about being from New Orleans. First of all, how would you prefer I say the name of that town
You
as
just
someone
said it
who's
right.
from there?
It's New Orleans. Okay.
New
Like I
Orleans.
feel like if you say New Orleans, that's when we know you're not local.
Okay.
Um, some people will say Nolans because I don't know why, but New Orleans just has always been how I've said it. I mean, I've been living there since I was one. Uh, and yeah, like it's just New Orleans. The whole thing. Good times.
Okay. And then, what is one thing about New Orleans that you would like people that aren't from there to know about? Like, is there because we hear it's the party town,
Oh
great
yeah.
food, all this stuff. Is there like
Yeah.
something hidden beneath the surface you would love to share? Because I've never visited. Dan loves going there. I've been meaning to
Whoa.
fix that. So
Okay.
what should I do when I'm there?
I need to take you. So
Yeah,
here's
please. I
here's
would
the
love that.
first thing. Here's the first thing. I will always tell this to people. Mardi Gras is in fact actually just more of a family friendly affair outside of like the 2 block radius of Bourbon Street, right? Like that's where all your
Right, the stuff I
stereotypes
would
come
see on
from.
Wild on E
Correct.
is not representative
Exactly.
of the entire
No.
thing.
The festival of Mardi Gras is basically just think of it like a college tailgate party. It's just a bunch of families with grills cooking together. You got ladders for the kids. Everyone's just having a good time. But I will say for you visiting, I'm gonna break a couple rules and tell you the insider secret, which
Hell
is
yeah.
Bourbon Street is an experience I recommend you do at least once, just to get it out of the way. But like 2 blocks down from Bourbon Street is a street called Frenchman Street, and that is literally the Bourbon Street experience, but for locals. So same live music, same bars, same
Okay.
party scene, but without all of the tourist trap and like crowds. So that's my hidden secret to you. Like I feel like you should do the Bourbon Street experience just to say you did it, but Frenchman Street, that's the magic.
Okay, I said two questions, but one more. You said ladders for kids? What do you mean?
Okay. Oh, this is my okay. So first of all, this is how we actually told my parents that we were going to have a kid. We had a friend build
Okay.
us a Mardi Gras ladder. So Mardi Gras ladders are literally like a ladder, and then they affix a seat to it. like a wooden seat with a railing bar, and that's where kids sit during parades so they can see over the crowds
Oh,
and catch stuff.
oh, that's smart.
It's a whole thing. Like if you look at videos of Mardi Gras parades, like you'll just see all this sea of ladders with kids on top of it, and that's like a very integral experience of the Mardi Gras lifestyle.
Okay, I
Yeah,
love it. Thank you so much for the insight.
it's what I'm here
I'm
for.
gonna fix it. I'm gonna get out there. I'm gonna get out to New Orleans here pretty soon. All right, let's get on with the show and explain what we do here. We're Giant Bomb. We're internet video game doofuses. You could support us by going to giantbomb.com/join, becoming a premium member. If you do that, you get ad-free versions of our shows. You get premium shows, Portal Pals, which is new and happening now. It's a limited series with Mike and Mary playing through Portal 2. You're going to get 9 lives of Mr. Mistopheles. I'm recording a new episode with Chuck today and Jan. We're going to get in there and make more adventures happen in Skyrim. There's plenty of cool stuff happening, but really what you get is the assurance that independent games media can survive in this current environment. You get the satisfaction of knowing that you are making sure that is going to continue into the future, and we really are very thankful for everyone who does support us. As far as this show goes, most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS feed on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Decapolice moves from Nintendo Switch to Switch 2. So there was a level 5 vision thing that happened. They talked about a few of their games. We'll get through their whole lineup in terms of like what happened with release dates, the lack thereof. But let's start with this one. Decapolice will no longer be released for Nintendo Switch according to level 5. The game is now planned for Nintendo Switch 2 instead. News about the game was provided during today's Level 5 Vision presentation. A short 30-second video was shown, and the official website now lists the change in platforms. Decapolice was announced way back in 2023. The project has suffered a number of delays, and as of now, doesn't have even a launch window. I think this is probably something that we might see a little bit more of. A handful of games that were going to come to Switch 1 getting delayed, now coming to Switch 2. Decapolice is one of those weird ones where it's like, yeah, I know they're making that. Well, they'll tell us like more about it when it's ready. I was expecting a lot more here, and 30 seconds kind of reminding people it exists, and then saying it's going from Switch 1 to Switch 2 is maybe like, oh, is that thing's maybe still a little ways off, actually. How do you feel about like a studio like Level 5 being like, okay, we are still making this game, and we're still all in on Switch 2 now instead of Switch 1?
I'm a level 5 sicko.
Oh yeah,
I'm one of like 10 people that have been following Decapolice since its announcement. But
that's why we had you on.
thank you. I figured that was why, but it was basically I'm happy that they're dropping Switch and putting it on Switch 2 because I don't think any of us would argue that games locked to Switch 1 suffer in terms of, performance. So by putting it on Switch 2, if that's going to make the game run better and look better, I think it's just going to be better for the game. So I'm for it. Would I have liked to see something more concrete? Yes. But at least they acknowledge it's alive. I'd rather it's still in the works than we've canceled it. So, you know.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's like it does feel like this one could have just gotten delayed or canceled, put on the shelf indefinitely, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, they haven't talked about it in such a way that's like the next time we hear about it could be from a leak saying, oh, development on that game has stalled. They put it on the shelf and we're just never going to see it again. I'm glad that they're seeing it through. Well, you said you've been following it. Well, remind people exactly what this is, what they can maybe expect from it, or what your hopes are for the game.
It's the best thing to put it is it's just like an RPG, like but with like a police kind of sci-fi fantasy like bend to it. I don't know. It's if you've ever played like Ni no Kuni or one of another level 5 RPG, Fantasy Life, anything, like you'll know the kind of vibe they're going for, but it feels a lot more expansive. If you go to like they actually have, I just pulled it up to remind myself because it's been so long since the trailer got dropped, but it's
right.
Very anime inspired, but it's very smooth sounding. If that makes sense, like it just kind of, I like the concept of an RPG built around kind of detective work and trying to figure out where to go. I don't know how much that's going to play into it, but I've really enjoyed just the promise of what that mashup might look like.
Yes, absolutely. There was more happening at this event from Level 5, but really the headline from Alana Higgs at Nintendo Life is many Level 5 release dates are still up in the air for some potential 2026 titles. So today, Level 5's Vision 2026 showcase happened, and while fans of Professor Layton are probably happy, the same can't be said for those who are waiting for updates on other Level 5 games. Partway through the showcase, President Akihiro Hino introduced a sizzle reel type video featuring three of the studio's upcoming titles: Inazuma 11 RE, a remake of the first Inazuma 11 game; Decapolice, so the one we were just talking about, an upcoming detective RPG; and Holy Horror Mansion, the next project in the Yokai Watch series. The former two have been slated to release for release in 2026, but for Inazuma 11, no date was reiterated, but a Switch 2 version was confirmed. As for Decapolice, well, that's now sitting on an in development in the trailer, but on the official website, it's still saying 2026. Fortunately, RPG site has spotted that the upcoming RPG's release platforms have changed. We just talked about that. Switch 2 instead of Switch. No doubt disappointing news for those who haven't upgraded for the new console yet, but there might still be time. I guess we'll just talk about that real quick. Maybe disappointing for someone. Here's the thing, I think, Fen. If you're into Decapolice, you're probably someone who was always going to get a Switch 2. And so I
Right.
don't,
Yeah.
and you probably want that game running as well as it possibly can. So do you think there's any sort of disappointment of, you once said this would be a Switch 1 game, I don't want to upgrade a little, this is a little unfair?
I feel like there's always going to be some of that, and especially in this era where console prices just keep shooting up instead of down. It's good. They're good. You're going to find people that want to cling to what they already have as long as they can. So yeah, I don't think I would ever begrudge someone for being upset about a shift like that, especially that wasn't a we're now releasing on both, but now it's just all Switch 2. But the way I look at it is you might not be able to play it at launch, but when you eventually do upgrade, it'll be there waiting for you. Um,
Yes.
you know, sometimes it's liberating to get away from the I have to play everything the moment it drops
Yeah, for
mentality.
sure.
Uh, I've not been able to do that yet. I still am that. But it's nice to dream.
Yep, exactly. Right. Yeah, I dream of being a person who isn't just driven by his cravings and desires all the time. Maybe one day, who knows? All right, let's stick with this. Holy Horror Mansion, which never had a release date, got the most footage in the reel, but it also ended its section with "still a ways to go," and that's a quote. So maybe 2027 or 2028, we have no idea. Of course, game development is tough right now, and if you're a Level 5 fan, you're probably used to the endless delays or vague dates at this point. That's true. Certainly, Level 5 can take their time on stuff. All right. As far as Professor Layton is concerned, that game is coming at the end of 2026. It's also, for the first time, coming to PC and PlayStation. That is, hey, that's welcome as well. I'm always a huge Professor Layton fan. I will play those games and then I'll replay them, and they'll release them on Android, and I'll play it on there as well. Looking forward to this one. Or do you have a history with Professor Layton? Are you looking forward to this game?
I mean, I've played all of them in the past. I don't think I've ever revisited them, but they're always such solid
Yeah.
story-based puzzle games, right? There's just something inherently silly about the concept of solving a mystery while doing things like moving matchsticks around,
Uh huh.
but there's a charm to it. And I do like that they advertised that they'd be coming to PC by calling it the New World of Steam. I thought that was a nice nod to the
Yes.
audience,
Smart. Yeah.
but
They're pointing
yeah,
at their head like, we figured this out.
exactly. They're like, haha. But no, I mean, more Professor Layton is never going to be a bad thing. I just hope that it comes out and is well received, because launching it on new audiences, I hope that means that they're confident in it and that we have more in the future.
Yeah, like I said, very cool that this is coming to other platforms. But Level 5 certainly seems like one of the publishers that really can benefit from the success of the Switch too. Like there's always questions around like EA, if they put their sports games on the Switch and Switch 2, how would those do? And like Resident Evil Requiem came out on Switch 2, ran great, and questions around how that really performed on that platform. Level 5 wouldn't have those issues, right? Like a Professor Layton, some of these other games, Decapolice, are almost associated with Nintendo to the point of people are like, yeah, that's a Nintendo game almost.
Right.
Do you think they can ride that wave?
I'm hoping so. It's always tricky when you're trying to jump onto a new generation of console hardware.
Yeah.
Uh, People might shift, but I don't think so. I think level 5 has been so ingrained with Nintendo launches for so long, even with the like Fantasy Life and Inazuma and stuff like that. They've seen releases elsewhere, but it's still a Nintendo like studio more or less outside of Nino Kuni. But it's been so long since they had an exclusive outside of a Nintendo console that it feels, yeah, like it just feels part of it.
Yep.
It's like Capcom dropping a new Phoenix Wright. You just assume it's going to be on a Nintendo set.
Exactly. Yes. It's it'll maybe come to other platforms eventually, but yeah, you just assume that you'll be able to get that on your Nintendo platform. Level 5 got into some hot water with fans. I think at the end of last year, when its boss, the CEO over there, talked about generative AI and was like, "Stop demonizing generative AI."
Yeah.
I don't know if people were looking at this vision and seeing like, "Oh, that looks maybe like they were actually using that here." But that's certainly a concern. Like if I boot up Professor Layton and I see something that like triggers my AI alarm, I will be disappointed, Finn.
Correct.
They're gonna have to make maybe efforts to avoid that, right? Like, this is a game that has a certain fan base that probably wouldn't love that stuff.
Right. I mean, the love of that franchise comes from the handcraftedness of it all, right? Like if they're starting to make the puzzles or out of Gen AI or use AI voices instead of voice actors, like I feel like that would really be a disservice to the fans.
Yep, absolutely. All right, I'm still interested in level 5 games. So I'll play them. We'll see what what they end up being like, and hopefully that stuff is not really in there. And it's at this point, I know studios are using it for code. God, that the talk of this new Claude code thing that can find security vulnerabilities in everything. Is this? I think that is this like in your realm, Finn, of something that you're familiar with?
Yeah. My day job is in the medical industry, so
Oh
it's
yeah, every single one of those things is probably running like older hardware. Oh my god, yeah, yeah. That's what they're saying. Is like this new Claude code base that can hack anything can literally find security vulnerabilities in everything,
yeah, it's like
everything, and so
it's a
everything's going to have to be updated. And there's people in your life that won't know how to update things, including people who probably work at hospitals. And it's like a almost a Y2K situation is what we might be talking about here.
yeah, a lot of industries that are famous for not being able to move quickly on stuff because of the most insane red tape and bureaucracy.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's going to be. It's like with that stuff in mind. Like if they can do that, obviously all these people making code for all kinds of stuff, they're just going to use this stuff. I've almost accepted that as like an autocomplete. I just don't want the Gen AI. That is certainly where I
Right.
like the Gen AI for creative, the creative side of things, the music, the art, the visuals, the gameplay, all this stuff. Just keep it out of there, and I bet they're not going to be able to help themselves. But we'll yell at them when they do, and hopefully they will
Right.
respond at that point. Okay, let's move over to Marathon. Report claims Marathon cost over $250 million as player numbers slide. This is from Jonas Mackey at Game Reactor. This is part of an ongoing conversation we've been having, Finn, where we talk about the cost of game development, the cost of Marathon specifically. This one, as Jonas Mackey writes, as you're probably aware, the developer of Marathon has been long and tumultuous, or the development of. And as is so often the case, time is money in the gaming industry. Forbes journalist Paul Tassi reports that the game has been extremely expensive to develop, making it yet another in a long line of AAA titles with a live service model that may struggle to turn a profit. I can confirm that Marathon's budget is over $200 million, likely more than $250 million. That does not include ongoing costs for maintenance and new content now. And that number, I always wonder if people like think about, hey, where does that number come from? How where do costs go? And it is just the paying for labor to make a game. Like that's what it is. And the people that work at Bungie are usually pretty well paid, and they've been, and it takes years and years. So you got to add all that stuff up. And it's the number I heard, and I'll kind of keep saying this on this show for a while now. I've mentioned it a couple times. That interview with I think Hasbro's CEO, where he was asked about, hey, why don't you guys make more video games based on your products? And he pointed out that the number that that people in his position use to like figure out if they can make a game or not is 1,000 man years of labor. That's how much it takes to make a game that can compete in the market. 1,000 man years, and that if you multiply that by the cost of labor in a place like the United States, you instantly get to $200 million. And the reality is, you actually get much closer to like $250 million out of the gate. And that's for just to make a game that can kind of compete. If you're trying to make a game that really stands out the way that Bungie almost certainly is with Marathon, it probably is going to tack on another $50 million here or there to just kind of get it across the finish line. And then we're not talking about, you got to continue paying those people as the game launches, and they have to support it in an ongoing manner. So those costs don't really go away until they do layoffs. That's why we see layoffs so frequently with games that have just come out. They're like, all right, let's reduce our cost. And it's a kind of a nightmare business model, but that's the way it's worked. Live service was supposed to be the answer to this then, because it's like steady income for years and years, predictable, steady income. So we can build a model of it's going to cost this much to launch the game. It's going to pop off at launch to mostly pay for those costs. And then it'll support us for years and years. And we can just like have a steady payroll, a steady game, and predict ourselves into the future. That has not really worked out for Marathon so far. A game that I think the expectations internally when they greenlit that game was that it would hit 6 to 10 million copies sold pretty quickly out of the gate. It is much closer to 2 million, maybe 3 million at this point. And the player numbers are sliding. Jonas Mackey points that out. But the not a ton of people are playing it on Steam. Maybe they're playing it on console, but it seemed to have sold better on Steam. So the word of mouth on this game I thought was pretty positive. And now it's like, I don't know. I think this is where live service games are at, Finn, where even if you're hearing good things, players could still just slip through your fingers. And then what do you do with a game like this that you spent a very long time making? How are you feeling about Marathon and the way people are playing these games?
All right. So first I'll talk about Marathon real quick, because this is actually a game where I have purchased it, but I'm too scared to play it because I don't know if I have the time to invest in it, because every person I personally know that I've talked to about this game is in love with it. They're calling it like transcendent in the next echelon of like quality of shooter. And that's some strong rhetoric from people whose opinions I respect. But does that matter if not enough people play it to keep it alive? There are some games that survive on way smaller player bases, but I don't think, like you mentioned, a company like Sony looks at that and goes, good enough, right? Like they want this to be a huge thing because, for better or worse, they put a huge push on live service games. And to go to your second point, like, how do I feel about live service, like stuff and this model? It's dangerous, right? Like, it's not cheap or fast to make games. And I feel like the companies that try and chase trends because some other game hit it big, by the time they come out, either that genre has moved on, or the audience is so entrenched in what they are already playing, they don't really have time to invest in a new one. And that's really where it comes down to, is people only have a certain amount of time. And with so many games becoming like quote unquote second jobs, where you go home and you got to do your dailies, you got to do your raids, you got to do your whatever, you don't have time to keep splitting yourself among everything new that drops. And it's a tricky situation for anyone trying to break out. And if someone like Bungie, who came out with objectively what is a beloved, well received, well made game, isn't doing the numbers either, it's worrying. But I really hope Marathon sticks around and has time. I like to use Rainbow Six Siege as the example, because that did not launch strong, but Ubisoft kept it going. They kept trying. Fortnite too, when it first dropped, totally wasn't as big as it was, but they were given the time to grow and build their audience instead of cutting it off at its knees and being like, well, it's a failure. So I'm hoping Marathon has the goodwill from Bungie to keep going long enough to find its audience.
I think the really disconcerting thing here is that it does feel like Bungie considered a lot of the factors of the kind of game it's making to make it as friendly as possible to people who don't have endless amounts of time. There are like, I think just having like the Rook thing where it's like you can jump in by yourself and have a different but equally good experience if you're not able to get your friends together. So yeah, we've seen things along those lines before, but this feels like the most well thought out version of that. And yeah, I see people in chat saying this is a game where you can jump in and out more than you think you can. And it's like, and even that, to your point, isn't enough to like address the concern, to address the problems fundamental to these big live service projects. You know, I guess you could say that maybe what this is a sign that when they line things up and that word of mouth sort of builds up behind the dam and then the dam breaks and everyone's like, oh, should I get back into marathon? It will be much easier to get back into marathon than into some other live service
Right.
games. But that hasn't been borne out yet. We don't know if that's going to work. I also just don't know if that Rainbow Six Siege sort of game plan is something that's still viable. We did see for a long time, especially after Siege, a lot of developers say our game didn't hit at launch, but we're going to stick with it and we're going to turn it into something. And then more recently, we have seen games getting dropped very quickly, and these, especially when they're these big, expensive live service games. Maybe that's the factor there. It's like they have already spent so much money on it that they don't have the appetite for it anymore, and that's certainly the case here. Bungie is this massive acquisition. There were costs associated with that acquisition, but the real concern is the cost of operation. And this game was needed to hit. It needed to hit coming out of Destiny 2, sort of entering a quasi maintenance phase. It was always supposed to be handing off the baton to Marathon instead, and it just like it's a little bit of a fumble, and it's the problem may actually be it's not a complete fumble. They didn't completely botch everything, so it's not as
Right.
easy as like scrap that, get to work on the next thing. They are in this rock and hard place situation where it's like, do we keep pushing forward with Marathon? There is no clear answer. I hope they do, because like you said, so many people are speaking so positively about the game. People seem to really love what it's going for. It does seem to have solved a lot of problems with the genre, and you would hope that like that would be enough, but we'll see. I mean, the question probably does come down to like, how does Sony feel about this? And because their live service push was a major initiative, and this was the one, maybe the crown jewel in that initiative. Like this is the one that really needed to hit, and it just sounds like Helldivers 2 did much better than this is doing.
Yeah. I just hope that they stick with it and don't cut it. It deserves
Yes,
love. So I'm team marathon success. So fingers
same
crossed.
same here. Hope it just continues along, and at the very least, like just see it through for a couple of years and see if you can like manufacture some more success out of it, because you have the goods. And if that's not enough, then this business is in, maybe deeper trouble than we're actually recognizing.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and take a break. If you want to skip out on these ad messages, you can do so. Giantbomb.com/join. Get yourself a premium membership. There you get ad-free versions of the audio and video program. In the meantime, we will be right back. All right, we're back with Game Mess Mornings. That's Finn. I'm Jeff. Let's get on to the next story here. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy rated for Switch 2 in Taiwan. This is from Sal Romano at Gamatsu. The Taiwan, the Taiwan Digital Game Rating Committee has rated a Switch 2 version of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy first launched for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC via Steam and Epic Game Store on October 26, 2021. The Switch version, people might remember, was the cloud-only version. So the expectation here should be that we get a native version running on the Switch 2. I'm a little surprised by this, just because it felt like, while there might be every reason to make this port happen, because that is a game that is beloved by many people. I put it on my top 10 for that year. You as well. Okay, great.
Same.
But my assumption, Finn, would have been that the people who could make a port happen probably have moved on to other things, and this will just have to be left in the past. But not the case. It's rated. It sounds like it's coming. Pretty cool, huh?
Very. I like you mentioned, it was just a really good game when it came out, and it's a lot like that D&D movie where I just feel like it was so good, but not enough people loved it to make it the success it deserved.
Yeah.
So anytime it gets a port and more people get a chance to enjoy it, because I'm still holding out hope for a sequel.
Yeah.
It was just so much better than it had any right to be. I really
Yep.
liked it.
Yeah, Spocketti in chat says the idea of an underdog game based on a Marvel IP feels crazy, but it really is. And yeah, it really is. It's one of those games where it was instantly maligned because people just were feeling fatigue for Marvel overall. The characters didn't look like the movie characters, and people were like, "Oh, another one of these games." And then it came through and it was like, oh, there's so much good emotion and good characterization in the game. And then it's like pretty fun to play on top of that. Okay, yeah, that's great. It just really delivers on the fantasy of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah, and it allowed them to kind of go do some deep cuts and deep dives into Guardian lore that the movies couldn't really justify. And as a comics sicko, it's just fun to see all the Easter eggs about the Guardians universe just in that game.
Yep. Yeah. So people point. Yeah, Luke in chat points out the Guardians of the Galaxy was free on Epic a month ago already. So yeah, if you missed it there, well, maybe now you can get it on Switch too. I might get it again. Have it on Switch too, playing it again. I would welcome that. It would probably run better
Do it,
than it did on the Steam Deck. So that would be cool.
do it, Jeff. Give
All right,
in.
yeah, let's
Your
make it happen. I am holding out hope for a sequel. I get it. I don't know. I just don't want to get hurt. I'm gonna believe that this is one special thing that we got, and we're never gonna get it again. That team, which team made that game? Do you remember? I'm gonna,
it was one of Square Enix's teams. I
yeah,
don't. I'm
but I
gonna
think they're
try and
over at
find it out.
Embracer now, right?
Yeah.
That team that did
Um,
that, Marvel's
it was
Guardians of the
Eidos
Galaxy.
Montreal.
Okay, yes, and Eidos Montreal did get acquired by Embracer. Um, yeah, I just don't have the faith that
Yeah.
Embracer would be able to
No,
make
you're
that
right.
happen, right? Yeah,
I before I remember that part, I was like, it's more likely than a Midnight Suns 2, but yeah, no, probably
yeah,
not now.
yeah.
Unless they gave it to a different studio, and then would it even be the same?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you would want these creatives to come back and be in charge of it, especially after establishing such a strong foundation with that original game. As a reminder, Eidos Montreal did have layoffs recently. Yeah,
Yes.
and because there was that cancel of that Wildlands game that apparently had been in the development for years and years and years. That got canceled. Embracer then laid off more people after they had previously laid off like 100 people in the few years before that. They basically have had layoffs at Eidos Montreal every year for the last 3 years. All
Oof.
right. Yep, exactly. Let's get on to this next one. Rare NES prototype missing a major character, a missing prototype showed up, and a major character has now been found in there. This is from Scott Barrett at DualShockers. A rare and valuable prototype of one of the most famous NES games of all time has made its way online, notable for omitting the character from its title. Nintendo has had terrible luck when it comes to leaks, with numerous unreleased and unfinished games making their way online. These have ranged from early versions of Super Mario Bros. To Pokemon games featuring monster designs never meant to be seen by the public. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was one of the most beloved games of the NES era, and it had a bizarre history tied to its branding. It turns out there is more to the story than people realized, as explained by the Video Game History Foundation YouTube channel, as a prototype without Mike Tyson has been discovered. When Punch-Out was first revealed, it was originally just called Punch-Out. Mike Tyson was added later as part of a deal to use his likeness, which was only temporary, as later versions of Punch-Out had to include a new character named Mr. Dream. A prototype version of Punch-Out was sold at auction for $45,000. This is an extremely early build of the game in which most of the characters weren't even finished. Details of this prototype can be found on the cutting room floor, but and that's like a capital of the cutting room floor. But the most important part is that Mike Tyson is nowhere to be found, nor is Mr. Dream. While Mike Tyson might not be there, there are other characters who don't appear in the final game who are mentioned, including Rocky Head and Mongol Khan. It's unknown if the name for Super Macho, if that's the original name for Super Macho Man, but was changed to avoid similarities to the Rocky movies. It's fascinating to see these glimpses into the early Nintendo games. That's one thing the Video Game History Foundation said, Finn, about this thing, is that it's the most unique early prototype game that they've seen.
Ooh.
Some aspects of it are like it's printed on an actual like cartridge with a plastic shell on it that has a label on it for Punch Out that features like one of the characters on there, and it's also the game is on a final production style chip instead of an early EEPROM, which is one of those things that would have been used in prototypes previously. And this is an early prototype that just looks like a final cartridge, But when you boot up the game, a lot of the stuff is just misaligned, completely unfinished. A lot of these references to characters that didn't end up in the final game. Seems like Punch Out was one of these test cases for Nintendo where they were figuring out a lot of their processes for developing games, and this is an artifact of that. So it was a really cool find. And then on top of that, it's history of Punch Out, which is one of the most timeless NES games. So just getting to see this stuff was very, very cool. Are you into video game history at all in that way?
I am, even though I'm just pulled it up and I'm looking at this. I was not aware of this until you had put it on the docket. So this is actually legitimately cool. It's just fun to see the behind when these behind the scene things pop up and you can learn more
Yes.
about stuff, even if you don't particularly care about the game that's being highlighted. Like, it's still objectively cool to see how things were handled back then, right? Like, people were just, it was almost like the Wild West. People were figuring out what worked, what didn't. So
Yep.
that's just objectively cool.
Yep, it's very cool. It's also, yeah, it is fun to like see like what things did end up getting cut, and I'm sure the Rocky Head whatever situation does come down to them worried about any sort of name that might be related to the Rocky movies. That's something that Nintendo got into trouble with before with Donkey Kong, so they probably wanted to avoid lawsuits. And that's also like there's a history of that with like Street Fighter, right? Where I guess they were going to name Mike Bison. The boxer was going to be Mike Bison, and they're like, well, that we don't want to get sued by Mike Tyson, so let's make this other character M Bison, and that's why it's swapped between the Japanese and American versions and stuff like that. So these companies think about that stuff, and they often also just copy stuff that they see. And then of course Mongol Khan, which is man, you can only imagine what that character would have looked like. But the final game shipped with like what was it's Piston Honda or whatever, like just obvious stereotypes for like Japanese people and stuff like that. That's what that series always was. So it's like you can only imagine what Mongol Khan might have ended up being.
Right.
Yikes.
Probably
Yeah,
for the best we ended up with what we got.
exactly. Yes, for sure. Punch Out's a game that I still want to come back. There was reporting recently from Imran Khan who said that one of the reasons we haven't seen a new Punch Out, yeah, shouts out to Imran as always, is that Nintendo was surprised by, I don't even know if it was a backlash, but the conversation around the Wii Punch Out, which once again featured a lot of ethnic stereotypes, and Nintendo's like, oh, people were talking about that in a way that we weren't expecting. And it was like, well, you probably should have. I guess my question to you, Finn, would be like, if they were to do Punch Out today, and they obviously just couldn't do the racial stereotypes anymore, how can they still do a Punch Out and kind of have that vibe? Like, what would you do?
You can still have like fighters themed after different regions and cultures, but not have it be a full-on stereotype like that. It exists. People do it all the time. They're like, they'll make what ifs. What if this character was from this region? And you look at it and you're like, that's really cool. It could be as simple
Street Fighter,
like, yeah, you can have that. You can have fighters be themed after various regions and ethnicities and cultures and not have it be like cartoonishly over the top. Like, it's not the 80s anymore. There are some people that don't care, but there are a lot of people that do.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to just make your design be cool, but not derogatory, I guess is a good way to look at it. Like my mind immediately went to, I don't know if you ever watched G Gundam, where every Gundam was based off a different country. And some of those were just so over the top, like, but you don't need to do that anymore.
Was there a gun? Here's what I need to know. Was there a Gundam with a sombrero? Because then I'll
there
know
sure
exactly
was. There sure was, sir. That is
okay.
Yeah.
And I know shout outs to any of our Mexican viewers. I know you guys actually usually love that stuff because it's like, this is fun. And like you always get annoyed at like white people being oversensitive to that. But that's still crazy. It's still crazy that a Gundam had a sombrero. That's wow. Fun stuff.
That's just representation, baby. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes. Shouts out to Sean. Sean would know.
I put it in chat just in case for you.
Fantastic. Its name is Tequila Gundam.
It sure is.
I gotta watch this. So here's what I would do. You just make up stereotypes of jobs. You just take the job, like you make a boxer who's based on like a firefighter, right? And then you can have all the fun you want because anyone can be a firefighter. And then you're lampooning or whatever a job, a profession, and then you can get all of the same effects as they got in the original Punch-Out from the original Punch-Out characters, but it's just for a profession instead of an ethnicity or a race. I think that's the move there. But I don't know. I'm getting the sense we might never get a Punch-Out game again, and maybe that's okay. That Punch-Out
never
Wii
give
game
up
is,
hope.
yeah,
One
you're
day.
right. Man, that Wii Punch-Out, they should just re-release that, but I don't think that they will. All right, so let's get through these last handful of stories. Sony is prepping a Metal Gear Solid movie. This is from Scott Baird at DualShockers. It has not yet come to pass all the times that they've been talking about doing a Metal Gear movie. With projects that keep languishing in development hell, Metal Gear Solid is hardly the only video game franchise to be cheated out of a live-action project, but it seems particularly odd that an action franchise that starts out relatively grounded couldn't get a movie. The great Solid Snake might finally be getting his big screen debut. Sure. According to the Hollywood Reporter, Sony Columbia Pictures has greenlighted a Metal Gear Solid movie with a familiar set of duos heading the project. The Metal Gear Solid movie is being made by Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein of Final Destination Bloodlines fame, with Avi Arad and Ari Arad, who have produced many films, including Borderlands and Ghost in the Shell. There's currently no word on a release date or even a cast for the Metal Gear Solid film, as it hasn't entered production yet. Dan was pointing out to us yesterday when we were talking about this, and I think he's got an old tweet about it, of how about every 2 to 4 years, a Metal Gear Solid movie is announced with actors attached, with talent attached, with writers, with directors, and it has not happened yet. Finn, is there any reason to believe this time will be different?
There's always a chance, right? But what I think secretly is happening is has anyone made the joke yet that because Metal Gear games are basically movies anyway, Kojima's killing them until they tap him to direct?
Oh yeah, he's going in there, right? He loves movies, and he's always talked about wanting to be a director. I don't know if he could do that with Death Stranding, and he's not. So I think he probably knows he shouldn't do this.
Well, here's the thing. Bloodlines was better than I ever expected it to be.
Right.
And so I still firmly believe Metal Gear works better as a series, like a prestige TV show, than trying to shove it into the runtime of a single film. But I'm still going to be there and hope for the best, because we're entering into a much better era of video game adaptations than we have had previously. So fingers crossed that it happens and it's good, but there's still so much time for it to just not happen again.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Let's see here. I'm sorry. I just saw someone say that a leaker said Mario Maker 3 is happening. I'll track that down. We'll talk about that before we're done. Yeah.
Neat.
I think the one thing that might change things now is video game movies have been proven to make a lot of money. Very recently, they've made a ton of money, and Hollywood works in trends. It works in fads. And when success happens with one thing from one realm, they will do that ad nauseum from that point forward. And they love adapting other IP, things that have been proven to make money elsewhere. So all those factors do work in favor, but there's a reason that this thing always crashes and burns, and it's because it is a little bit difficult to adapt, and the fan base is so particular, and there's not a lot of room for imagination, Finn, that's the point you're getting at with it's already basically a movie. Like we've seen the movie already, so you're going to be compared one to that, and that probably causes a lot of headaches for writers, directors, and producers as they try to figure out a way to make this thing work. And I think based on like the history of so many people getting attached to projects and then moving on, seems like a common thing in Hollywood that will probably continue. People maybe thinking they could take on this project and then getting distracted by something that probably pays just as well and is a little bit easier to adapt. So we'll
Cynically,
see.
do you think it could be more along the lines of like, if you don't do something with a property for long enough, you lose it. So by announcing that it's in the works again, they hold on to the rights in perpetuity until it actually happens. But that, I don't know, cynically, that could be a factor.
Yeah, I always I'm sure it depends on the contracts. My understanding in a lot of those cases is you lose it unless you actually put something out. Like I know that's how it works with like Dick Tracy, right? Warren Beatty has had the rights to Dick Tracy for forever because he made that movie. But he's actually made other Dick Tracy stuff that people probably know about at this point. Maybe you don't. to keep the rights to Dick Tracy. And those things are like TV specials, like a half an hour in character interview with Dick Tracy that Warren Beatty aired on TV at like 12:30 at night, when he bought a TV slot, so that he could keep the rights. And it's like he actually had to make something and put it out. It was a piece of shit and no one cared about it. But that satisfied the contractual obligation. So if they want to keep the rights, they might have to actually put something out. Yeah, he's done that multiple times, says Colonel Sanders. Yeah, I know he's done it at least twice. Maybe he's done it 3 times at this point. I don't know. Warren Beatty, hell of a guy. All right. Fresh Xbox discoveries point to Duet codename. The rumors around this is that this is Xbox Game Pass Duet. And that name, Duet, implies that it is a combination of having Game Pass and Netflix together. And this version of Game Pass seemingly would use the Game Pass Triton, another code name, that is a version of Game Pass that focuses almost solely and exclusively on games that Microsoft owns themselves, so they have more control of it. So you get a version of Game Pass through Netflix that includes all the Xbox Game Pass games, but doesn't have the third-party games, so that Microsoft doesn't have to go and get new approvals from each of its partners to have those games show up. Then I want to know, what do you think the appetite is out there for a combination of these two services? Like, what do you expect the price to be? How do you think Netflix people who don't have an Xbox access these games? Is it just you plug in a controller to your TV or a Bluetooth to your TV and then start playing through Netflix? What are your expectations for this?
Well, Xbox has already kind of set the precedent of allowing like Samsung TVs to play Xbox games.
That's right.
So having Netflix, I mean, I feel like price-wise, we're looking in between the bottom tier and the medium tier if they're cutting out third-party games and dropping it just to Xbox first-party studios, which a lot of people treat Game Pass as a way to play first-party studio games. I feel like, it never hurts to have more tiers and more payment options. Because if you cut out access to the third-party games and just make it Microsoft Studio games, there's people that would benefit from that. And then if you have another tier that includes Netflix, like, would a lot of people do that? I'm not sure, but I don't see how it costs them a ton of money to have it be an option. I don't know. I feel like it can't hurt them, but I don't see it making huge waves to bring in a ton of new people. It might just be a tier that some people drop down to.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think that would be the concern. I think that has been one of the reasons why this has not happened earlier. There's been word that Microsoft has been very keen to do this for a long time, but they've struggled to figure out the business side of it. Of if they do this and it's a really good deal, do a lot of people just drop their raw Microsoft subscription and then jump over and do it kind of through Netflix, where Microsoft will get a lot less money, presumably. And then the cost, the price of this thing. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is what, $30 a month. The standard version of Netflix is $20 a month, and then if you want the premium 4K, that's $27 a month. These things, okay. So if you're paying for both already, you're looking at what, around $40 to $60 a month. And I think that them trying to get a price in there, if that price comes in and it is like $40 a month in some combined way and you don't get ads, maybe, that's a good deal. But if this thing is $50 a month, people are just going to roll their eyes and be like, that is a huge number, regardless of what I'm getting. I don't want to think about that, even if they're already paying for those two things separately.
Correct.
And I think with the price increases recently, a lot of people are dropping these services. I guess maybe not Netflix. I know its numbers keep going up, but it certainly feels that way.
Especially as prices keep going up. I mean,
Yeah.
You have to look at our reality. They keep raising prices, but everything is also raising its prices. So people start making cuts. It might not be Netflix right now, but people are dropping other streaming services to make room. There was a time when I was subscribed to all of them, just because, that was just the reality. Everything had something I liked, but I've had to start.
And it was all like $8 a month too,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah. So, I mean, but that's just not our world anymore. And so who knows?
Yep, absolutely. All right. Just a quick check-in with the sales charts in Japan. This is the first Famitsu Media Crate sales chart after the PlayStation 5 price increase. And Pocopia is still the number one selling game, doing very well. Let's see, in Japan, it's at 867,000 copies sold, doing very well. But when it comes to the hardware, the PlayStation 5 did see a week-over-week decline. All the platforms did, so maybe this is just in line with that. It went from 19,000 units sold in the previous week to 13.5 thousand units sold the following week. The Switch 2 went from 65,000 to 59,000, and the Switch 1, I guess this is maybe notable. The Switch 1 was sold less than the PlayStation 5 did last week, and this week it sold more than the PlayStation 5. It was at 16,000 units sold as opposed to the 13.5 for the PS5. Japan is a weird market for PlayStation right now. It's one that you feel like it should be doing better in, but through the PS4 and now especially during the PS5, the system never fully found its footing. The PS4 did pretty well in Japan, all things told, but the PS5 is not quite done as well. And the price increases can only be hurting it. We should expect this to be reflected worldwide, right? People are just going to be purchasing fewer PlayStation 5s, at least until Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out, now that the price is increased.
I would agree. I mean, this is the first generation in history where the prices just keep going up instead of down. So that's obviously going to be reflected. It just, people will probably find a reason to purchase them during big events like holidays or when a massive title, like you mentioned, GTA 6 drops. But I don't think we're going to see as many people just randomly go like, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time I upgrade to a PS5 Pro. I don't think we're going to see that, at least in the numbers we're used to. And we're all sadder for it.
Yeah. I mean, the PS5 Pro specifically, 4,600 PS5 Pro units sold the previous week, and it dropped down to 840, so less than 1,000. And then the PS5, the standard PS5, went from 2,800 to 550. It's all the digital edition, which is, I believe, in Japan at a lower price. It's a Japan-only digital edition. So that one is where everyone's going. And that actually went up in sales. It went from 11,900 the week before to 12,000. So it kind of just maybe flat is a better way to put that. But yeah, this is just the reality, and it's going to hurt their sales, but they've accepted that that's the reality, and they're just going to keep pushing forward with it because costs have increased that much. Also, maybe noteworthy, this might be the first week where no PS4s were sold in Japan.
Interesting. I just noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it. It's not on the list at all. Odd. Okay, let's keep going here. Starting April 10th, 2026, Amazon Luna will no longer offer game stores, individual game purchases, or third-party subscriptions. This is from their website, but effectively it sounds like they're shutting down all the ways you can acquire new games through Luna, but it's not like shutting down, quote unquote. So like you could still use Luna, but you can't really get new games through Luna. I'll read the what's changing thing here from their blog post. A la carte game purchases are no longer available. Previously purchased titles will remain playable through June 10th, after which they will be removed from Luna. So yeah, some things are just getting straight up removed. Bring your own library will no longer be supported. Games previously played in this manner will no longer be playable on Luna after June 10th. Ubisoft Plus and Jackbox Games subscriptions sold through Luna are discontinued. New subscriptions are no longer available for purchase, and any active subscriptions purchased from Luna will be canceled at the end of your next billing cycle. Third-party game stores, EA, Ubisoft, and GOG, are being removed from Luna platform. Yeah, this thing's shutting down, right? They know they keep saying it's not, like there's parts of this thing where they're like, it's not shutting down, or it's being reworked, I think is how they're saying it. It's shutting down. This is just you can't use this service the way that it was intended to be used. I don't understand what they're like really doing here other than just pulling back from this initiative entirely, right?
Yeah, I mean, removing games from their service, removing options for your service, removing entire storefronts from your service. I don't know how, I mean, that's just corporate talk. You don't want to say what it is. You want to make it sound a little more palatable, but if you were using Amazon Luna, and obviously not a lot of people were, we wouldn't be in this situation, but this would be a sad day.
Yep, exactly. How do you feel about cloud streaming overall? It just feels like, man, that was a long decade of it's coming, and now it feels like everyone's like,
Yeah, I mean, I've never really used it outside of like my PlayStation Portal when I travel, but it's again, it's just one of those things where it never hurt to give people the option, even if it wasn't their primary way of playing.
Yep.
Uh, it's always sad when something gets removed from the ecosystem.
Yep, absolutely. All right, I'm gonna see if I can find this Mario Maker thing. Yeah. Okay. So Special Nick said that Mario Maker 3 could be happening. I would love that. You know, the Switch 2 has a mouse. It kind of makes a lot of sense, but I always got the sense that Nintendo expected better performance from the Mario Maker games. Mario Maker 3 or Mario Maker 2 for the Switch 1 sold around 5 million copies, which is really good, but it doesn't quite compare to like when they just put out their own bespoke 2D new, like Wonder performed much better than that, I think, in the end, and it continues to perform much better than that. So it's like they can make, if they have that 2D Mario team make just a new Mario game, it'll do better. So it's like that's an opportunity cost. Why not just do that instead of Mario Maker 3? That was always my thinking. But here's the counter to that. Mario Maker fucking owns, and we should get more Mario Maker games. So hopefully they're actually doing this. It would be a great fit for the Switch 2 with that mouse. That was the one big complaint with Mario Maker 2. It was just a little bit more cumbersome to make levels on the Switch compared to the Wii U. And the mouse would absolutely fix that. And honestly, it would kind of be even better than the stylus on the Wii U. So yeah, hopefully this is real. I'm gonna hold out hope. You know, we should get a direct from Nintendo by June. So if they're gonna drop something like that soon, I would love that. Even if they drop it in the next couple of years, I would be more than happy to accept it. All right, Finn, that does it for the headlines. We're going to move on to the poll question from yesterday. We have that over here on Giant Bomb's YouTube channel. I am going to refresh things. I asked you all, have you ever played Rhythm Heaven before? Yes or no were your options. And for this audience, a respectable 39% said yes, they did, and 61% said no. You have a chance to fix that, everybody. Rhythm Heaven Groove coming to Switch 2 and Switch 1 on July 2nd. So yeah, great series. I was playing Rhythm Heaven Fever for the Wii on Dolphin yesterday, Finn. You can just play that with the mouse. You can play that with the mouse and just use the 2 clicks as your 2 inputs for the most part. Oh. Yeah, it works great. It's a lot of fun. People should go play that.
That sounds tempting.
Yeah, it's worth it, man. Dolphin, good emulator. All right, everybody, that does it for the poll question. No new poll question today because it is Friday. We're going to wrap up the week with the Bomb 12 as always. But before we do that, let's take care of some business. Finn, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, what you have going on, and all of that good stuff?
Sounds good. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I am NOLA Nerdcast on pretty much everything. Turns out being consistent is a good thing. I mean, and I just rebranded and restarted everything. So all of my PAX East coverage is pretty much the most recent stuff prior to 2019. But yeah, that's where I'm going to be doing everything. That's everything. I'm going to be going to Summer Games Fest for the first time ever this year. Fantastic. I'm very excited about that. But yeah, that's all my coverage, my reviews, my podcasts and interviews will all be via NOLA Nerdcast. So if you feel like giving it a shot, I'm always going to be happy to have you. And yeah, I just love talking about cool stuff with cool people. And that's why I'm just going to be very thankful that I got to be part of this today.
Awesome. Great news about Summer Game Fest. We'll get you on the couch. We're going to be doing Giant Bomb at night once again, everybody. So
100%.
Get to see Finn there. That'll be fantastic. All right. Let's see here. With that out of the way, let's see what's happening today on Giant Bomb. We're going to be recording some stuff between now and UPF, but UPF will be happening at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. We're probably, I think there's plans to play a couple of games, but we're going to try that. I think it's called Scam Line, which is kind of a friend slop social deception game where
we might want to bump that one, Jeff. It seems like maybe more people are going to be out than we thought.
Oh, really? Okay. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. All right. Yeah. When we can get the whole crew together, we'll play that one because it does seem to require, it just seems like the more the better. Okay. So we're probably going to do a grab bag then. That was the original plan. We'll probably do that. Maybe that X-Men multiplayer, the arcade game. Maybe we could do some of that. So tune in for UPF. That'll be at 3 p.m. as I said. Other than that, we're going to have, just the normal stuff that you can get from the website all the time. And then tomorrow we'll have a special drop as well. And of course, if you're a premium member, there's tons of new stuff dropping all the time. All right. With all that out of the way, I believe it is now time to end the show and end the week with the Bomb 12, everybody. These are the 12 games that really matter to people who are really playing video games. I have the Bomb 12 right here, starting with number 12 as it goes to PS5, Starfield. Number 11, as we come out of Easter, I Am Jesus Christ. Number 10 is Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. Number 9 is Resident Evil Remake. Number 8 is Star Fox 64. That's a hell of a thing to see on the chart, but obviously a lot of people excited about that after the movie. I also played Star Fox 64 this week. Number 7 is Resident Evil Requiem. Number 6 is Neo 3. That popped back up after I think kind of dipping a little bit. Maybe people are checking into that now. Number 5, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, thanks to its PC port. Number 4 is Slay the Spire 2. Then the top 3, as it has been in different orders for the last couple of weeks. Number 3 is Pacopia. Number 2 is Crimson Desert. And number 1, Marathon. This audience certainly is playing that game. So I guess we'll see. I mean, I really just feel like it's continued success with people who are super into video games. It's just a good omen, Finn. Like, eventually this is going to click with that wider audience. I don't know what will happen. A big streamer will start like really playing it a ton, and it'll just take off from there. I have no idea, but I believe in the power of Marathon coming back. All right,
Marathon
that's the
supremacy.
Yes, Marathon Supremacy once and for all. That does it for the Bomb 12. If you want to submit your game for next week's Bomb 12, go to the website. There, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see this current week's Bomb 12, and then on the left-hand side, there's a Vote Here button. If you click on that, you can submit your game in a Google form. I will add it to consideration, and then we'll wrap up next week with the Bomb 12 and the 12 games that you all are playing. All right, with all that out of the way, time to really finalize things. Finn, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talking about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
I very much appreciate it right back. Thank you. This was just super fun. I had a wonderful time.
Absolutely. We'll make it happen again. You were a great guest. Can't wait to do it once again. Like I said, thanks for watching, everybody. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.